Okay, my name is Deirdre Jones Shook, aka D Shook, and I attended TSU from 1983 to 1987. I graduated in May of 87.
Okay. So what made you choose TSU?
It was really my mother's alma mater. It was convenient, it was local, and she spoke so highly of TSU, her experience. So, in dollars at the time, I really didn't have the money to go off to school. And certainly there are other schools, U of H was an option, but I just didn't feel connected. And maybe part of the connectivity that I felt was my mother's experience. So TSU was it.
Okay. What did you study there?
I was a biology major.
Mm.
Don't know why I selected that. Actually, I do. I wanted to be a dentist.
Mm.
And by my junior year, I recognized that I was not fit for that line of work, that profession. So, but I didn't want to change my major at my junior year. So I kept going with biology, got my degree in biology. Did nothing in that field actually after graduating.
So what do you do now?
I am an administrative coordinator with the Houston Health Department.
And so, how do you feel TSU prepared you, I guess? How did TSU prepare you for the path if you would have been a dentist, and then how did it prepare you for the career field that you're in now?
I think, one of the things that I did notice for those that were really interested in continuing on and pursuing, even because it was a pre-med, pre-dent program, and what I did recognize is that most of those students at the time, they really were interested in working in the community that they were familiar with. So culturally, they wanted to maintain a practice in largely African American communities. And what it enabled them to do, those that were really interested, is they had the ability to be in touch, do internships, go and observe dentists that were African American dentists at the time. So I don't think if my experience were different, if it were a different environment culturally, that perhaps the advantage of being able to do that may not have necessarily been as broad as it appeared to be. So with TSU, that was a key advantage. I think your other question was, how did it prepare me professionally? One of the things that I felt was a really wonderful experience, and what I did not find to be true I had at the time my best girlfriend attended UT, University of Texas in Austin, and the difference of experience with instructors, professors, was completely different. The classes were significantly larger for her, and she too was a biology major. So the classes were significantly larger. It was very impersonal. And at TSU, it was very personal. The class sizes were generally smaller, with very few exceptions. But the instructors seemed more like your neighbor down the street. You could relate to them. There was a way to really identify with someone that looked like you. And the teaching was actually second to none. I can tell you that it fully prepared me, oddly enough, with starting my career doing nothing in the field of biology. I was still very, very much prepared for corporate America because of the interaction. With it being so personal, you got the opportunity to hear the truth about what you should prepare yourself for out there in the world. So with all of those things taking all those things into consideration, I would not have traded that experience for anything in the world.
Okay. So you kind of talked about personal experiences and being able to relate to some of your professors. Could you identify any professors or anyone on campus that was kind of significant or had some type of impact on you?
Dr. Thomas. She taught English and linguistics. I took English from her. And when I tell you this lady was a phenomenal English teacher, but more than that, she talked about practical things. I can remember being in class, and one of the things that she talked about was that the class talked too much. And she would say, don't nobody want you when you talk too much. When you go on a job, they don't want to know if you can. There's a place for talking, but in the beginning, they don't want you to talk your application out. They want to know if you understand the application and if you can fill it out. And there's a time for talking, but you may not make it that far if you aren't paying attention. And so she just dealt with real life issues. She seemed to have more of a personal touch. And outside of that, she was a phenomenal English teacher, second to none. I have not seen, even through graduate school, I have not seen a more gifted and talented English teacher than Dr. Thomas. Awesome.
Do you know if Dr. Thomas is still teaching at TSU
You
now?
know, I would love to know. I don't know. I think the last time I actually ran into her, and this was probably back in maybe the mid to late 90s, she was still teaching there. So I don't know if she's still there or not, but she was truly phenomenal.
Last night at the Tiger Choice Awards, we gave an award to Teacher of the Year, and a Dr. Thomas won. So I don't know if it was the same one
I
or
hope
not.
it was.
Okay, and you also talked about like the different cultural experiences that you experienced versus your friend at UT.
Yes.
So how would you say, like, how important, or if they are important, are HBCUs?
Vitally. The first thing that comes to mind is because there are a lot of students that don't have an opportunity, I guess educationally, perhaps their early learning experience may not have necessarily been as good. Perhaps they've been in areas where the education may be considered below par. And for the HBUs to give you an opportunity, many of them still have open enrollment. I don't know how many of them do still maintain that, but at the time that I attended, the fact that there was open enrollment, one of the slogans that we had, our mantra was, it's easy to get into TSU, but it is hard as hell to get out. It's not easy getting out. You've really got to work hard. And I can't say that my best friend at the time, her experience was more difficult by way of the production of classwork or the quality of work or the quality of the instructors. I think it was comparable. And I think it was unfortunate that perhaps at the time, TSU never got the level of recognition during the time that I was a student that a lot of the larger, largely other race populated universities did. But it was second to none, the education. So yeah, I loved it.
Okay, so during your time at TSU, could you remember any like historical, like U.S. historical moments? Do you know of any that took place while you were?
Yes.
Okay.
I can remember Angela Davis coming to speak, Shirley Chisholm. I can remember when Jesse Jackson was running for president, and the slogan was "Run, Jesse, Run." So I can remember that. My goodness, there were so many prominent individuals that, but those are the ones that stood out for me. Yeah. Would I have seen Shirley Chisholm? Maybe not. Would I have seen Angela Davis? Probably not. So yeah, that's priceless. So yeah, that was wonderful.
Are there any other memories being at TSU? Anything else that kind of sticks with you?
I think it was just for me, one of the things that was probably, if I had to say that I regretted anything, it was the regret of maybe not having what people think of when they think about going to college, and that is having the experience of living in the dorm. I think that experience adds to your collegiate experience. I didn't have that because I commuted back and forth from home to school. So perhaps I lacked in the fullness of what one thinks about when you think about going to college. You think about being in the dorm, and you think about, having your meal card and things of that nature. So I didn't have that aspect. But what I did find is, even though I was commuting back and forth, it was still a wonder. I practically lived at TSU. I went to as many parties and step shows and you name it, I was there. I was on Student Senate for the first year that I was there. I stayed pretty much involved in student government. So for me, those things were important. So although I wasn't there as a resident student living on campus, I still participated in so many things. It almost felt that way.
And finally, what advice would you give to TSU students or HBCU students, and maybe students who don't know whether or not they want to go to a PWI or HBCU?
I would say really take the time, number one, to apply. And you have to decide what's really important. What kind of college experience are you really looking for? If you're looking for an environment that will offer you a setting where people really largely care about you. I mean, you can pull the professor to the side. You can have that one-on-one conversation. You can tap into and touch that professor. If you want that type of experience, and you want it on the basis of, I'm a young adult. For some, I'm leaving home. This is my first experience being away from home. But you want it to feel somewhat like home, meaning like the people down the street. If you want that type of environment, that HBCU is certainly it. I think to continue on culturally is so important, because even when you get into the corporate world, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to work with social services, it doesn't matter. Today, cultural competency is so very important. And if you can grow as a young adult and understand really who you are, because that's not really, you don't think about that really until you get to a certain age, when you start to want to identify with whatever group you think you're a part of, or whatever group you feel you want to be a part of. The experience of being at an HBCU is priceless, because it offers you that. And you can't trade that out, the camaraderie with people that look like you, mostly, largely, although it's changing somewhat now, because even the HBCUs are reaching out to other ethnicities, other cultures, which is great. It's wonderful to do that, but you just have the opportunity to have such a more personal, I call it a more personalized college experience at an HBCU. I loved it.
Thank you, Ms. D.
You're most welcome.